Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for standing by. Welcome to the Motivating Disengaged Employees in 2015 webinar. Please note, during the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. A copy of the presentation slides and the recording will be emailed to you within 2 days. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Wednesday, February 11th, 2015. My name is Stephanie Thomas, and I am your host on behalf of HR Direct. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I am pleased to introduce to you our speaker for today, HR consultant and president and founder of HBL Resources, Lisa Perez. I would now like to turn it over to you, Lisa. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here with HR Direct and everyone who's joined the webinar today. I'm Lisa Perez, and as you mentioned, I am president of HBL Resources. We are based here in Florida with clients throughout the United States. There's a picture there of me and my family. We have 5. We are a blended family, and I'm right at the top of that triangle, if you will. My granddaughter is the littlest in the middle there, and then our wonderful family. So it's great to be here, and thank you so much for having me. Since today's webinar is about disengagement, I wanted to start things off with a poll to see how many of you are already working to engage your employees. If you keep up to date with HR trends and industry leaders, you've noticed a huge focus on engagement over the past few years. From following this topic, and it's great to see that everyone's talking about it and wanting to reconnect with their employees, you would think that every company's #1 priority is employee engagement. So I'm curious to see how much of this conversation really is crossing over into real-world implementation. So if you'll take a moment to go ahead and fill that out, we'll take a look at how many of you are engaging or are just looking to start these conversations. Keep in mind I will be sharing some best practices throughout this webinar today, so you'll all want to keep engaged as well to make sure you can jot down any of those nuggets, because they certainly will be things that have been successful. Okay, we've got a couple more coming in, I think. All right. Well, it looks like most of you have answered, so the polls have closed. Obviously, employee engagement, you all realize, or the most part, it is a very important conversation to be happening, especially as it relates to culture. A few have moderately important, about 22.5%, and some slightly important. Hopefully those 2 will see at the end of this conversation exactly what engagement is, how it can help, and definitely the things that we should be doing. Now, our learning objectives today, obviously, to understand disengagement, we do need to talk about, to understand engagement, we have to talk about disengagement, what it is, how it affects your business, what are the signs of disengagement, so we can easily spot that disengaged employee and steer them on the right path. And I would be safe to say that most of us know or can spot what a disengaged employee looks like. We're definitely going to add to that today. Keep in mind, to combat disengagement, you have to promote engagement. And like that poll question said, it sure does have to be part of that company culture. And then, of course, like I said, I'll provide some nuggets throughout, but at the end we'll also have some tips for you to either improve your engagement programs if you don't have any in place right now, or start to create those programs and get your employees engaged, motivated, and certainly passionate about their jobs again. So disengagement. Going back to the poll, obviously a lot of you answered that engagement was a priority, and you know how important it is with company culture. However, with disengagement, we need to understand that first. Normally, I wouldn't use a dictionary definition to talk about a workplace term, but I do feel that this one fits employee engagement and employee disengagement perfectly. Merriam-Webster defines disengage as separating from someone or something, or to stop being involved with a person or a group, to stop taking part in something. And that's exactly what happens with disengaged employees. They mentally and emotionally check out. They separate from their jobs. They stop being involved, taking part in company activities in the workplace, and not only with their coworkers, but in whom they're doing it for, and that's your company. Now, you could very well have a happy employee who is disengaged. That's an employee who shows up on time, they do their work, they really do stay in under the radar. They couldn't be happier about that fact, but they don't have that emotional attachment to the company, their boss, or their peers. So I might be happy at work, but I can also be disengaged. So what happens when an employee disengages? Obviously, they lose interest in the work that they're doing, and ultimately that grows to create a disengagement with your company as well. That has some serious side effects. Gallup has studied this topic extensively, and in 2013 they released a report some of you may be familiar with on engagement levels. According to that report, disengaged employees cost the United States somewhere between $450 billion and $550 billion per year. That's a big number. That's because disengaged employees don't produce as much work, and the work they do produce isn't that high quality. Disengaged employees are also more likely to steal from their companies, miss work days, drive business away, and get into on-the-job accidents, all of which also cut into your workplace profits. Even more damaging, disengagement spreads, right? You've all have seen it. It rubs off. I like to say we're rubbing elbows with disengaged employees, right? They don't tell their managers about their issues and where they are disengaged. They do tell their coworkers, however. You'll definitely hear those things come up in the rumor mills and by the water coolers. Once coworkers are exposed to those kinds of complaints, they themselves are more likely to start disengaging as well. That's why it's important to seek out disengagement and to try to fix it as soon as you can. Now, what are some of the signs of disengagement? You may be familiar with some. If you know what to look for, it's easy to find out who's no longer engaged at your company. Now, having one or two of these traits might not necessarily spell out disengagement problems. Keep that in mind. After all, these are things all employees can work on and improve in some situations. It also could be temporary, maybe due to employee life events. But if several warning signs are there, it may be time to take a closer look at that employee. The first and most obvious sign of disengagement is complaining. However, as I said before, disengaged employees don't tell their managers of their unhappiness, their disengagement. So this is not always an easy one-stop fix. Similarly, frequent gossiping is another big warning sign of disengagement, but may be hard for managers to spot. What are some other signs of disengagement? Obviously, like I said, they don't necessarily talk to their managers about it, but managers should look for other signs of a bad attitude, such as employees pushing back a little bit more than usual on requests to complete new work or extra work. They're lacking enthusiasm for new projects or new tasks, lying about workplace assignments, or making excuses for underperformance as well. And that could be for their actions or inactions. I'll give you an example. I was walking behind an associate who happened to see an employee on the very top rung of a ladder in our workplace. Now, if you all know about ladders, there's just some steps you shouldn't be on, and that's usually the first two rungs. That employee was definitely in a position to assist that coworker and correct that behavior, knowing that we were really focused on a safe environment. that team member's ability or lack of action in that situation creates a situation for disengagement. So keep those things in mind. Now, obviously, I walked, right behind and said, hey, let's get on the safe rungs of the ladder. But those people who walk by those things day in and day out may be disengaged. Something to definitely look out for. Disengaged employees also tend to prefer working alone and avoid helping out their team members on different tasks. They don't ask questions in meetings or seek out help or clarification on difficult jobs. They really do withdraw themselves and stay in their cubicles or cubes. Speaking of which, if employees who normally keep areas clean and tidy, neat workstations, are now starting to look a little bit messy, disheveled, and cluttered, that may be a sign that they no longer take pride in their job or office. Just another small sign. If an employee is frequently arriving late, leaving early, or missing more days of work, it can also signal a growing disengagement problem as well. These behaviors can also show up in other ways, like not following through or following up on tasks, or completely missing deadlines on a regular basis. And like I said before, if there are patterns that are developing, you definitely want to find out what that's about. Again, having one or two of these traits, like I said, may be harmless. I think that we've all had to deal with messy desks every once in a while, especially as I look around my office today. However, it's more about looking at the big picture and putting things into context. Some of these behaviors are more excusable if it's a busy and stressful time for your business, so consider the business cycles as well. If any of these actions develop into patterns, like I said, that's when it's time to reach out and engage in conversation with your employee. Now, fixing disengagement. Now that you know what you're looking for and how to find disengaged employees, the next step in the process is to find out why the employee is disengaged, to attempt to fix the problem. Once you know why they are disengaged, you can create the right environment for engagement. But remember, fixing disengagement is not a simple process. Disengagement isn't typically something, again, that just happens to employees. It's usually caused by something within your organization. That company culture is critical. There are millions of reasons why employees disengage, and to fix the problem, you should take the time to find out specifically why your employee has disengaged. When you try to engage your employee again, it has to be at a personal level, which in a webinar like this makes it difficult to offer exact solutions. Every company and every job, every employee is different. So I can't give precise causes or fixes. I can only paint broad strokes to cover the topic as thorough as possible. Generally speaking, there are some of the problems and issues that cause employees to disengage. Now, I've got a question, I think, coming in. Well, maybe not. So causes of disengagement, right? What causes our employees to get disengaged? One of the biggest reasons employees disengage is lack of clarity in their jobs, which covers a number of issues. Employees might not know or understand what's expected of them in their roles, or they may have a hard time finding meaning in what they do. If they don't understand how their jobs fit into the organization as a whole, those who contribute directly to your business's products and service can see how their work affects the bigger picture. The proof is right there. For example, many organizations use a dashboard or a balanced scorecard, some kind of visual representation of the goals and mission and vision of the organization. If you can tie in how that employee's job responsibility affects that balanced scorecard, affects that mission and vision, well, that's a key reason, that's a key distinction in having job clarity. Now, keep in mind, employees behind the scenes, Maybe those in administrative or IT positions or in another department that doesn't directly deal with your products and services, some of them get so focused on their day-to-day tasks that they don't understand why they're doing them. So that's where that balanced scorecard explaining how they impact that is so important. Every job in your company plays a part in the system. So explain it to employees. Let them see where their value from their job hits your bottom line. Otherwise, their tasks can seem menial or pointless. Before projects are started, explain why the work is important. And when projects conclude, outline what will happen next and how it impacts the company's vision and goal. Of course, if employees don't understand their jobs entirely, the fault could lie with underdeveloped, quote, bad managers. It could be a management issue. Now you'll notice the title of the slide is Underdeveloped Bad Managers, with the bad in quotation marks. That's because while most employees think they have bad managers, most managers aren't actually bad in my opinion. They just need additional training to develop the ability to build a harmonious, engaged, high-performance team. Even sometimes they don't even know how to give the right feedback and coaching. Often, organizations also reward long-term employees with management roles without providing the skills to manage the people side of the role. Keep that in mind. One of the top complaints disengaged employees level against their managers is a lack of feedback, both positive and constructive. To do better work, employees need to know what they did right and what they could do differently the next time. Managers must be trained to provide that feedback, like I said, especially when that feedback may not be positive. It's easy to give praise, not as easy to give a critique, so they've got to be trained to do that. When feedback isn't provided, employees are frustrated and left in the dark as to how they're doing, and they can't improve. I always like to say you can't fix something if you don't know it's broken. Another common reason employees disengage is that they feel their managers take credit for their ideas of work, especially in high-level meetings. This happens if employees aren't getting regular recognition and feedback. Make sure your employees know that their work is appreciated, and make sure managers give credit where credit is due. Not every report needs to be labeled as having come from another employee, but for big projects or long-term work that's being presented to executives or senior leaders, it's important to put employees' names out there and to let your employees know that the C-suite, what the C-suite thought of their work. Say that 10 times fast.
Robin, speaking of that C-suite, we got a great question from Leah that I think would be good to bring up now. How does an HR administrator handle disengaged employees when upper management, or the C-suite, doesn't care about keeping employees engaged? They're more focused on the bottom line, for example.
Absolutely. Well, I think this has to do exactly with your role as an HR administrator. I always liked to believe that my integrity, what I did for my organizations, whether it was something that my leaders supported or not, I knew it was the right thing to do. It was what we do as HR practitioners. So I would say to Leah, keep on trucking. Make sure that you can continue to, wave the flag of engagement. And eventually, when good things start to come of it, your senior leaders just may take notice, and it'll be a direct result of what you've started. So stay the course, Leah. So other signs of disengagement. Another growing cause of disengagement is an inadequate amount of opportunities to develop and advance. This may not necessarily be in the form of upward mobility, especially in today's day and age and environment. The opportunity to continue to learn more about their own job function and obtain additional knowledge, skills, and abilities for their future roles is of critical importance to employees. A lack of career development can lead employees to feeling stuck in their current roles. And keep in mind, when we talk about career progression, that may not just be up the chain of command, so to speak. Consider lateral moves within your organization as well if that upward mobility is not possible. Keep in mind, to feel satisfied and engaged, employees need to know that they won't be doing the same things day in and day out for decades until retirement. Offering training and letting employees attend classes, workshops, or events like this will help to develop them as workers, which means they'll provide higher quality of work and be more emotionally engaged. Another best practice that I can share through my experience in human resources is we always reached out to our local business community to bring in those kinds of trainings. I remember partnering particularly with Citibank at one time when I was the HR director at the Fontainebleau Hilton. And Citibank would come in, and although the workshops really had nothing to do with their current roles and their jobs, it provided additional training on mortgage lending, financing, budgeting, all of those kinds of things that helped to create an engaged employee. They knew that the organization was giving back to them for their personal development as well. So consider who your local business community is, what kind of training, classes, and workshops they have, and offer those things as well. So, like I mentioned as well, long has been the debate about salary and its effect on engagement, especially in Gallup's engagement survey, which is based on 1.4 million employees from 192 organizations. They reported no significant difference in employee engagement by pay level. Well, that said, if employees aren't receiving semi-regular raises, it can lead them to turning out subpar work. After all, if they've been working hard but haven't earned a better title or more money, many may start to wonder, what's the point? You don't have to offer huge raises or a new title every year. Of course, that just may not be possible. But make sure your employees know they're on the right track to reaping these benefits further down the line. And again, that goes back to that feedback discussion.
Lisa, I have another question for you that came in from Janet. But I'm just going to say, how do you keep people engaged if they're worried about maybe the job isn't as available down the line? How are you how do you keep them positive then?
What do you mean their job isn't there down the line?
What if a company downsizes or, there's uncertainty looming?
Oh, absolutely. I think, wow, that's a big question. One of the largest downsizings I ever had to do was, again, at the Fontainebleau Hilton. We had to, after 9/11, you can imagine with the industry, so I get this very clearly. One of the things that I think is important is that we make sure that we can rally the troops thereafter. We do have businesses to take care of, to keep healthy so that we can continue to work, continue to have some of our workforces in place. And one of the things that were critical during that time frame was knowing that these things had to happen. How you have that conversation is of critical importance so that those individuals can walk out of your offices and your organizations with their dignity intact and with some kind of plan going out, but also being able to settle the masses after those things take place and give almost a town hall conversation, if you will, about where the organization is, what they're looking to achieve from a career progression standpoint. Again, showing how in some ways it could be a positive to be able to learn some new tools, new techniques, new skills, because in actuality they may have to wear multiple hats at that point. I think it's all in the messaging as well. So hopefully that gives some insight and answers that question.
Well, what about after a layoff? Sorry to interrupt you, Lisa, but what would you do after a layoff to keep those employees that you do have, that you kept, engaged?
Yes, I think, like I said, the first part is communicating. Communicating that, yes, we've had to have these layoffs. We realize some of your coworkers, are no longer here, and they may have developed very healthy relationships, but making sure that we can have all of the masses, all of the troops still focusing on the same mission, vision, values. So it's really about saying, hey, we're glad that you're here. Here's where we're looking at going after this point. Will you help us get there? Can you help us get there? And getting that buy-in, so to speak. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay, thanks. So we talked a little bit about no career progression, and those were great questions. Let's talk a little bit about recognition. Raises and promotions are only one part of the bigger dilemma with disengaged employees and lack of recognition. And I do want to double back really quickly with the follow-up there on that question, Stephanie, as well. One of the things I know that was successful, and it also came to mind, was putting they used to call them committees. Now they're high-impact teams, high-performing teams, that kind of thing. But putting those individuals together for specific tasks, this way they can begin to develop more relationships and deeper relationships with those who they may not have otherwise worked with. So putting those kinds of teams together to get specific things done, particular projects, missions within the organization also help to create new workplace, coworker groups and things of that nature. So that just popped into mind, so forgive me for digressing for that moment. Now keep in mind, with recognitions, employees want their work to be noticed. They want to know that someone within their company sees the hard work that they do and it's appreciated. Yep, raises and promotions are great, but recognition can be much simpler than that. Don't underestimate that simple good job or thank you or thanks for staying a few extra minutes today or hours. That can really boost employee morale, and don't underestimate what ignoring good work can do either. Employees who feel ignored will disengage. That's practically guaranteed. A high performer can quickly turn into the weak link of the team if their efforts continue to go unnoticed. This isn't just a problem with big companies either, where it's easy to get lost in the crowd. Even small companies need to recognize the work of their employees. Now keep in mind, I think you saw in my bio earlier, I'm a huge G. Neal fan. They're in the HR Direct family of brands. There's great recognition programs that they offer, and I have been a user of those programs for years, so definitely consider those. With these four causes of while these four causes of disengagement are very broad, you can see the underlying themes. Employees want to perform meaningful work. But regularly recognizing your employees gives their job meaning as well. That is the biggest way to fight disengagement. Recognition cuts disengagement off at the pass and keeps employees engaged. Engagement. As the saying goes, the best defense is a good offense, and that's so applicable when it comes to disengaged employees. It's much easier to promote engagement before employees ever disengage than it is to win back employees who have already disengaged. So, what is engagement? Engagement is, of course, the opposite, right, of disengagement. An engaged employee is one who has an emotional commitment to his or her company, their job, its goals. Like I said, they've bought in, okay? It's not just about employee happiness or satisfaction. In fact, they're pretty different. Although engaged employees are more likely to be happy at work and satisfied with their job, it does have to do with that emotional commitment. Engaged employees see that their jobs are meaningful and impactful to their companies. They can see how their job fits into the organization as a whole. And I go back to that balanced scorecard approach. How is what that employee is doing today impacting the bigger picture? Help them to see that tie-in. I see a question here that is one of my favorites. If I can just jump in here. Casey's asking, what are some non-monetary ways of engaging employees? How do you motivate workers who only seem to be motivated by money? And it's funny, Casey and everyone, we start to see in the last few surveys the tie between monetary and engagement is really closing the gap. Employees really want to see that the company cares about what they're doing, cares about them as individuals, not just because I'm making widgets for you, so to speak. Some non-monetary ways of engaging employees is, like I said before, having opportunities to offer training from outside vendors, outside organizations that come in, whether it's a personal development or professional development workshop. Oftentimes, some organizations will come in and do those things just to create synergies among your organizations. I know I was very successful in my career in finding those, and it didn't cost the organization, any dollars. We did track productivity times and things of that nature, and we actually saw an increase in some departmental productivities as a result. So hopefully that answers a little bit. I also I love to do low-cost and no-cost recognition programs, and like I said earlier, HR Direct and its family of brands have some great stuff, so keep that in mind. So back to engagement. What happens when an employee is engaged? Because they see the direct effect of their involvement in your company's products or services, engaged employees are far more likely to go that extra mile. Engaged employees are going to work harder. They're going to stay late when needed. They're going to help out their coworkers, and they're going to do what they can to improve the overall company. You know why? Because they want to. They have that emotional attachment that gives them pride in their jobs and in your company. They want your business to succeed because they want to succeed. To engage employees, those two goals are one and the same. They're aligned with your company's values and goals, which leads to all kinds of benefits for your business. Now remember, this is an organizational culture of engagement, so it really has to be weaved throughout the organization. As employee engagement levels increase, absenteeism decreases, customer satisfaction goes up, sales go up, profit goes up. Engaging your employees is one of the best things you can do for your business, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Like disengagement, employee engagement doesn't usually just happen. It requires work on behalf of the company to engage employees. If you want your employees to emotionally connect with their jobs and your business, it's going to require outreach. Before we dive into some of the ways we can engage employees, I want to go over some of the compliance aspects of these programs. I know it's not as fun, but then again, neither are lawsuits and fines. So the biggest issue you want to be aware of when creating a culture of engagement is discrimination. You have to make sure your programs aren't discriminatory against certain employees based upon protected classes. We know some of those, right? Age, race, gender, nationality, or religion. Let's look at Employee of the Month programs, for example. Companies want to reward maybe younger employees to help motivate them and foster loyalty. But if their age is the sole reason why you're rewarding or nominating employees, your program is discriminatory, obviously, towards other groups. When evaluating who your Employee of the Month will be, if you take someone out of the running because they've missed a few work days, your program may be discriminatory if those days were taken off for religious or medical reasons. So you need to thoroughly evaluate your programs to avoid any biases. And so this includes biases that are more about favoritism than discrimination too. If recognition programs only value top performers, and if nominations are only given by the C-suite, you run the risk of favoritism, something definitely to look out for. Encourage nominations from peers or mid-level management, and tie the awards into your company's mission statement or core values. If you're recognizing someone on an attribute, how does it tie into what your company's culture is, what they stand for? These attributes will open up the field to all employees, regardless of their level in the organization. Now, while recognizing employees, make sure to recognize them in office-appropriate ways, right? Don't give away gift cards to lingerie stores. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I know it seems obvious, but you'd be surprised at some of the HR nightmares that have existed out there for me. However, you choose to recognize your employees. It should be appropriate for all employees. That doesn't mean rewards can't be personalized. A personal practice I implemented at one organization was inside our new hire packet, I asked for information about the employee's likes. For example, favorite color, birthstone, favorite stores. This way, if I was going to pick up a gift card or a merchandise album, I knew what kind of things they liked. I knew what stores they liked to favor. This way, when we wanted to provide a more personal award, we could use that as a tool. And again, like I said, I'm a huge G. Neal fan, HR Direct family of brands. When we purchased service and recognition pins, we ordered it including the employee's birthstone for a more personalized touch. Employers love to reward and recognize employees at the end of the year especially, which makes sense. But be careful not to tie in rewards to a specific holiday. Your employees will love an end-of-the-year bonus or an office holiday party, but obviously not everyone will be so excited if these tend to be themed or tied to any one specific religious or ethnic holiday. So keep those things in mind. Speaking of bonuses, make sure to include non-discretionary bonuses into overtime pay calculations. Non-discretionary bonuses are expected bonuses related to productivity or other established goals, and they need to be included when you're calculating overtime pay. Finally, any monetary rewards you give out, like cash, checks, or gift certificates, they do need to be reported as taxable income. The face value amount of the gift must be processed through your payroll system and included on the employee's Form W-2 or grossed up by your company so that the net amount after required tax withholding is the value you intended to give the employee. Now that you know what to watch out for, let's get to some more fun stuff. Engagement programs and surveys. Keep in mind that when I use the word engagement programs, I'd like to make sure that you understand that truly the culture of engagement is a process. And the difference for me is programs can start and stop. Like Employee of the Month, you start in January, you end in December. Processes really go throughout. They continue and they are part of the ongoing culture of your organization. So with that said, before you start any engagement program, or if you're looking to boost your current program, you need to evaluate current engagement levels in your company. The best way to do that is by distributing anonymous engagement surveys to your employees. Now, keep in mind, this is different than a satisfaction survey. We really are looking for engagement. All of this talk about dangers of disengaged employees, you may be thinking that you'd rather do non-anonymous surveys to find out exactly who's engaged and who's not, but obviously I would avoid that using non-anonymous surveys. Anonymity allows the employees to answer more honestly since they aren't worried about potential repercussions for their answers. Like I said before, disengaged employees aren't likely to complain directly to managers. They're also not likely to put complaints into writing if their names are attached. You can distribute paper surveys or email your employees links to anonymous online surveys for paper surveys. But don't ask employees to return them in person. Obviously, that does not create anonymity. This set up a Dropbox in some area like a break room. If you opt to email surveys, make sure you post a link or allow your employees without email access to still respond to that survey using maybe a private area or company PC on site somewhere. Keep in mind, once you start to create a culture of engagement, nothing would prohibit you from creating a culture where you can start to get feedback one-on-one with your employees. We did that at one particular location, and we called them simply a listen and respond, where we can have some one-on-one dialogue and conversation with every employee on a regular basis to continue to tap into those engagement levels and to continue to keep them strong. So survey questions. Take ample time to create your survey and make sure it's personal to your company. You'll want to try to develop the most effective survey the first time, since you'll need year-over-year trend analysis, which that won't be available if you go and change the questions even slightly. Since engagement is about emotional connection, ask questions about how your employee feels, not about their work. For example, how do you feel about your job might be a better question than what is your level of satisfaction with your job. Focus on feelings and emotional connection when you write your questions. Try to ask a variety of question types too. Ask open-ended, some yes-no, and ranking or rating questions. A variety is going to be important. Open-ended questions help you tailor your engagement program to what your employees want, but the others can help assess engagement levels. If you're looking for something digital, one of the best things I've seen in the digital and social media space right now is an organization called Teamphoria. Teamphoria.com does a great job with engagement surveys and internal social media recognition, and definitely one that's been a best practice for me. Keep in mind you should aim to conduct engagement surveys annually at a minimum to see how your programs are performing and to gauge the overall atmosphere in your company. Keep in mind, my most successful experience with a healthy and improved engagement level was achieved when I was able to implement and sustain a semi-annual survey with a very strict adherence to the follow-up, follow-through, and accountability components. So keep that in mind if your organization can support that.
Lisa, we have a great question that came in that I thought would be appropriate to talk about now, and that question is from Claudia, and she's asking if you have a program where you're receiving multiple suggestions and you're getting a lot of feedback, but after a couple of months it fizzles out, how do you re-engage those employees back and have them continue to participate and submit whatever the request is?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that we see with suggestion programs, and I thank the caller, the participant for this question, I love to talk about the suggestion programs, is what are we doing with the suggestions, okay? Is the process in place ensuring that we are giving the feedback back to everyone? I'll give you a suggestion that might, or an example of my own that might help here. We had a suggestion program. We actually allowed our employee population to name the program, and it came out of brainstorming and what have you. It was called the Be a Solution program, and our icon was a little bee, okay? When we had the suggestions come in, we would always post all suggestions and also what was happening with that suggestion. Was it in the C-suite for approval? Were we looking at numbers to see what the cost would be? Is it something that was not going to be implemented, and why that was not implemented? Oftentimes we see a fall off of suggestions coming in because they're going into this black hole, and our employees really don't know what's happening. They have no feedback. So I would say re-engage in what is the process of the suggestion program. Maybe say, hey, we've seen some fall off, get the buy-in by allowing the employees to, come up with a creative suggestion program name so that they have a buy-in. They have some, like I said, that link to it, that engagement with it. I helped name it, we voted, whatever. And make sure that follow through and follow up, that feedback piece about what's happening with this suggestion that I put in this little box is implemented as part of the process. Put it on your bulletin boards. It's a simple, what's the suggestion, what's the time frame, when will the next update be, and what's the result, so that they do know what's happening, even if it is something that won't be implemented. If it's not, why not? Let them know. Does that help?
Helps me.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. So, survey informal recognition. Effective engagement programs must include recognition. We talked a little bit about this already. And as I said before, most of the reasons why employees disengage are related to employees wanting meaningful work, and recognition lets your employees know that their work is important. There are tons of recognition tools out there, many of which are, again, sold on Genial as well. Employee of the Month, Core Value Awards, Annual Awards, Anniversary Awards. They can all be effective if you use them properly. Have a clear nomination process and always explain why an employee was chosen to receive an award, especially if it ties into something in your mission, vision, culture, the tenets of the organization. Also keep in mind, not all recognition and rewards work for everyone. One employee may be okay with recognition in front of the whole department, while others may just want a little bit more of a subtle presentation. Once you've implemented a formal recognition program, seek regular feedback from your employees to see how effective it is. Every year or so, check in with employees to see if you're giving them the rewards they want. See if they still think the process is fair and that every area of your organization is represented in that process. After all, there's not much point to running a recognition program to increase engagement if your employees aren't interested in it and especially don't trust it. So get that feedback. Now, of course, recognition shouldn't be given out just once a month to one employee. It should be a frequent thing for all employees. And I'll be honest with you, these cards have been one of my favorite throughout my career. They were always in my top drawer and had my favorite pen. It was purple, so they knew it was my handwriting on that card. And they were a way for me to at least every day for the last 5 minutes of my day, jot down a few quick personalized notes, stick those in the internal mail so that people would get them. It would be 5 years later that I would come upon an employee who thanked me. She was a housekeeper who thanked me for that birthday card. It was an amazing moment. So never discount that formal, handwritten, personalized note and how much of an impact it can have. Now, keep in mind that you want to make sure you have an opportunity for peers to recognize peers as well. Managers obviously should recognize their employees, but peer-to-peer is important as well. One of the things that could also be created within your organizations is a process for peer-to-peer recognition. Do we take time at our department meetings or our stand-ups or whatever internal communication meetings you have to take a moment out to say, who would you like to thank today? Okay? And for informal recognition, timeliness is key. Like the New York subway ad says, if you see something, say it. Don't wait a week. They've already forgotten. Recognize hard work as soon as you see it. Try to make your recognition personal as well. This month's earning report was really great. Dave did a great job. I appreciate it. Is much more meaningful than thanks for the report. Finally, informal recognition doesn't have to be over the top. It should be proportional to the work you're recognizing. If anyone is excelling in a day-to-day task, for example, a simple thanks is enough. If someone just completed a month-long project that required late hours, a more heartfelt response or a card would be appropriate. So just to wrap everything up, engaged employees are employees who have emotionally detached from your company and their jobs, often due to feeling a lack of meaning in their work, which is bad news for your business. They lower the general morale, produce lower quality work at slower speeds, and are more likely to run into absenteeism issues. Fortunately, Disengagement doesn't have to be permanent. Companies can start focusing on engagement programs to help employees reconnect emotionally with their work and especially with your company. Recognition programs and processes that never end, whether formal or informal, are going to be effective at boosting engagement levels. You do, however, have to keep an eye out for compliance issues, mostly discrimination, favoritism, or payroll issues. To assess your engagement programs, conduct annual engagement surveys. Strive for a every 6 months survey as well to see what your employees think about them and also to see where engagement levels currently are. Then set a course of action for improvement. Well, I am so thankful to all of you for your time today. I really do look forward to taking any questions that come in from the chat box. Let me take a quick peek. Stephanie, do you have any queued up?
Yeah, we have a few queued up. One specifically, what advice would you give to a person who is managing maybe an office where people are working independently, maybe they're independent contractors, or essentially with their role, they're their own boss? How do you increase that engagement in that type of workplace environment? Sometimes they want to, or you're trying to ask for a positive change, but they might be more focused on themselves and their own responsibilities that they don't. All the employees that work there might not want to promote that workplace positivity. So what would you suggest there?
Well, it sounds like two issues there. Everyone not wanting to promote workplace positivity. I'm not sure what the question there is, but the first question in terms of, maybe we're all remote, maybe we are far away from each other, we're kind of autonomous. I think a culture where you can have an opportunity to bring them together for a purpose, maybe it's a, pre-shift breakfast or a lunch, or maybe a fun team building activity. If you've seen anything out there, there's this really fun team building activity that I found online, the Marshmallow Challenge. So go ahead and Google that. It comes out of an organization called TED. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. Bring those remote employees in for something like that. It's fun. It's also something that they can learn in terms of being part of the team and how important everyone on the team is. It's a great team building activity, but also something that's thought-provoking and engaging in terms of learned content. So I would highly recommend that, but bring them in for that purpose. Now, if you are seeing associates or employees that are not promoting engagement, not promoting some of the processes and programs, I think that there may be a misalignment in potentially the hiring process. We really have to hire for our culture. I used to say all the time, hire the smile, train the skill. And so the first alignment in that hiring process, do they buy into the culture of engagement that you have set up and created or are trying to set up and create in your organization? If they don't meet that, then you're going to have those problems down the road potentially. So does that answer both questions, Stephanie?
I think that's a good way to lead our person who asked the question down the right path. I think those breakfast or lunch ideas is perfect to get everyone together and kind of give the spirit they may need.
Right.
We have time for one final question before we sign off. And the question is, how do you handle it if employees expect to get praises for everything they do, and when you do not, they get upset? What would you need to do on a company level?
Well, I think there's two things. One is consistency. Maybe that individual doesn't see the consistency in the recognition. I think that without creating a big explosion on another topic entirely, you may see it as a generational thing. Our younger population tends to need more feedback and recognition than does our older population. So maybe taking a look at it from that perspective. And then simply sometimes asking, why do you feel this way? How can we, even the playing field in terms of how you're feeling about the recognition? And you'll be surprised at how much they're willing to tell you in an open and honest conversation. Like I said before, those listen and respond conversations that we had in one of my organizations that we did was a critical check-in piece. So that's what I would recommend.
Perfect. Perfect. We do have time for one more. Let's just do one more because I think that we have a few minutes left. One thing, hold on just one second. How can you reward a department without offending staff in another department if one department did well and the other department doesn't receive that same recognition? Do you have any suggestions about that?
Can you clarify the question for me? So there's two departments, one did well, one didn't do so well?
Just receiving a reward for whatever. Maybe it's a project they worked on, or maybe the management was promoting the reward for one department and the other department didn't have time to focus on engagement.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely, that could be a cultural thing. Why is one department being recognized and not the other if everybody had a piece of the pie of success, so to speak? So I would definitely double back with the other manager and find out maybe that manager's not engaged. But I think it's important that you remember as a department manager, your role is to oversee your department. Don't not do it because someone else isn't. Kind of leads to my answer earlier today about, you know what the right thing to do is, and maybe encourage that other department to tag along. Hey, I'm going to do this. Maybe that manager doesn't know how to reward or needs that underdeveloped manager be able to maybe give them that little nudge that says, hey, let's do this together. I'm going to do this. Would you like to do it as well? How can I help you do it for your department as well? If that's, in fact, the case that both departments did well. That's how I understand the question, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, I think that covers it. Thank you, Lisa, for all your insight that you shared with us today. I think it was very helpful.
To all the questions. You're welcome.
Yes, and thank you to all the participants for being available with us and staying on with us for the hour and asking all of your great questions. As a reminder, at the end of the week, you will receive an email that will include today's webinar slides and a recording, as well as some additional information about the products everyone has been asking about. In your follow-up email, you will also receive an invitation to sign up for our next webinar, which is on March 18th. The topic will be Common FSLA Mistakes to Avoid. How to avoid the five most common FLSA mistakes, with Allison Green, and she is the author of the popular blog, Ask a Manager. A big thank you to Lisa for being here with us today and sharing all the information. Thank you again, Lisa. And everyone. Thanks, everyone, again, and have a nice day.